Mr. President, let me first congratulate you and the Japanese delegation on assuming the presidency of the Security Council for this month. I would like to express my gratitude also to Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of UNAMA, Ms. Rosa Otunbayaba, for her incisive briefing. We express our appreciation for the work that she and her staff are doing in a very difficult situation. We also welcome the thoughtful intervention made by Ms. Fatima Jilani at this meeting. Mr. President, we thank the Secretary General for convening the second Doha meeting last month and to the government of Qatar for hosting it. The international community, Mr. President, has an obligation to help the millions of destitute Afghans with the provision of unconditional humanitarian assistance. This remains severely underfunded at 45%. It is also important to find realistic pathways for the revival of the Afghan economy and support for sustainable development in Afghanistan. To this end, the international community should help revive the Afghan banking system and commercial activities, and create the necessary conditions for the release of Afghanistan's frozen assets to its central bank. It is also important to implement the planned infrastructure and regional connectivity projects. We welcome the World Bank Group's recent announcement for the next phase of support for Afghanistan to generate employment opportunities and bolster income-generating activities, including through revival of the CASA 1000 electricity transmission project and other connectivity projects. For its part, the Afghan interim government must also fulfill the international obligations and comply with international laws and norms, especially on the fundamental rights of women and girls, promote inclusivity, and above all, eliminate terrorism within and from Afghanistan. The interim government also has an obligation to refrain from threats against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of neighboring and other countries, and to prevent terrorist attacks against them from the territory of Afghanistan. The violation of these principles and norms is not in the immediate or the long-term interests of Afghanistan. Mr. President, Pakistan considers sustained engagement with the Afghan interim government to be essential to normalize the situation in Afghanistan. We hope consensus can be developed on the recommendations made by Ambassador Feridun Siniloglu in his report. We should develop a realistic roadmap with reciprocal steps by the Afghan interim government and the international community, leading to the end state of normalization in Afghanistan and its integration within the international community. Pakistan regrets that the Afghan interim government did not participate in the second Doha meeting convened by the Secretary General. This was a missed opportunity for engagement with the international community. Both the Afghan interim government and the international community must be pragmatic in their expectations and demands on the pathway to normalization. Pakistan would welcome the appointment of a special envoy on Afghanistan. However, he or she should have a clear mandate, be acceptable to the Afghan interim government and to regional countries, and be selected after consultations with all concerned. Pakistan is open to the idea of establishing a smaller international contact group, provided it brings added value and does not replace or duplicate existing regional formats. It should exclude spoilers from its membership. Mr. President, while we take note of the Secretary General's report in document S/2024/196, I must express our disappointment at some of the observations which are factually incorrect and fail to take into account the context of some of the developments covered in the report. It is untrue to assert that there were large-scale forced returns of undocumented Afghans from Pakistan, or that there was large-scale return of refugees from Pakistan. In fact, after Pakistan declared the intention to apply its laws regarding the presence of illegal and undocumented aliens on our territory, about 500,000 undocumented Afghans chose to return to Afghanistan. They were not forced. 98% of those who returned were voluntary returns. The 2% who were deported included people who were involved in terrorism, drug smuggling, and other crimes, or were convicted prisoners who had completed their jail terms. Mr. President, we find the assertion in the report of, and I quote, an unfavorable protection environment in Pakistan particularly offensive. Pakistan has sheltered almost 5 million Afghan refugees for over 40 years at great economic, social, and security cost to our country and to our society, with little help from the international community. Even today, over 1 million undocumented Afghans remain in Pakistan. They should return forthwith. We have made several exceptions for those with Afghan ID cards, for POR cards, for those who may be vulnerable if they return, and for the over 60,000 Afghans which third countries have offered to receive but have not done so for over 2 years. Nor have we, Mr. President, so far asked for the return of the 1.4 million registered Afghan refugees in Pakistan. But if the UN believes that the protection environment is unfavorable, it should arrange forthwith for their early repatriation. Mr. President, regarding the reported border incidents, the exchange of fire by Pakistani security forces was always in response to cross-border attacks by the TTP and its affiliates against Pakistan's border posts and installations. We would expect the UN to call on the Afghan interim government to prevent such cross-border attacks and infiltration by the TTP and other terrorists into Pakistan territory. These terrorist groups include Daesh, ISKP, Al-Qaeda, and particularly the TTP and its affiliates, who are responsible for persistent attacks against Pakistan's military and civilian targets. The Afghan interim government's failure to control the TTP and other terrorist groups erodes its claim of full control of its territory that it asserts in order to secure international recognition. The United Nations should undertake an investigation to find out how the TTP has acquired advanced military equipment and weaponry, and to identify the sources of the TTP's financing, which is helping sustain its 50,000 fighters and their dependents and its terrorist operations. Mr. President, I am confident that this Council will join Pakistan in demanding that the Afghan interim government terminates its relationship with the TTP and its affiliates and prevents them from having free rein to conduct cross-border attacks against Pakistan or other neighbors. Left unchecked, the TTP, supported by Al-Qaeda and some state sponsors, could soon pose a global terrorist threat. Mr. President, the UNAMA mandate does not cover issues relating to terrorism. Yet terrorism within and from Afghanistan poses the most serious impediment to normalization in Afghanistan. The terrorist organizations present there pose a security threat to each one of Afghanistan's immediate neighbors. Counterterrorism must be the highest priority in any future roadmap for engagement with the Afghan interim government. Mr. President, Afghanistan is our immediate and closest neighbor. Pakistan and our people have suffered immensely during the last 4 decades of conflict and civil war in Afghanistan. Yet, Pakistan continues to provide the principal avenue for humanitarian help, trade, and development support for the people of Afghanistan. We will continue to offer this support. The destinies of Pakistan and Afghanistan are intertwined. Peace and security and prosperity in Afghanistan are an imperative for Pakistan. I thank you, Mr. President.